Hello my friends, and welcome to Carpo's channel. I know this is a little bit different than the ordinary format that I use, but I'm actually still here. I'm behind the camera, and I'm using this whiteboard that I bought. The reason why I'm doing this video is because I mentioned in the last video about these cycles that or one of the recent videos I did, about how I try to understand the cycles within cycles, because I don't know, it seems to help me when I can visualize things. And I felt kind of cheesy. I drew this out a couple days ago and I thought, nah, I'm not even going to bother sharing it. But somebody asked me to, and I thought, well, I might as well, because I found these to be hugely important, in my opinion, to understanding life. And I'll explain as I go, but it's one thing to write poems or stories, or to understand math equations, or to do art, or understand, some basic philosophies and theories about life, whatever it may be. But the words that we have within our heads about the cycles of life, unless I can put it on paper, the words just become jumbled at a certain point. So I guess I can only explain from the beginning. I'm going to use a laser pointer today, and it should show up on here. If you're on a phone or a small device, it might not be as easy to see, but I tried to put it all on one board here as well as I could. So I'll take a sip here, and I'll explain where I'm coming from. The cycles of life. I want to understand how the cycles of the year relate to let's just say the mentality or thought patterns of the day, even down to the way that we behave. So maybe I'll just explain it first, where I'm coming from here, and then we can go from there. So right here in the center, we have the now. This is the moment we are in, obviously, right now. And our mind is always spinning and turning. We have this we call the background voice and background noise, and there's this constant voice in there, and at one time I wanted to understand how to silence the voice, but then I started to look a little deeper and say, well, why do you want to silence the voice we are given? In other words, I was kind of into Eastern mysticism and whatnot, and I thought, why is being calm and relaxed the authority on behavior, in a way? So anyhow, I like the jumbled thought pattern of the now, and to keep your mind flowing. So what happens is you're in the now, and if you follow the pointer here, the now leads into an idea. And then that idea is supposed to move into a process. And the process is, trying to figure out how to do something, or what you want to do. Say you have an idea, and then you're like, well, what would be the best way to get there? So you move from the process down into experimentation. And hopefully that experimentation leads into creation. And this cycle is repeated over and over and over in people who even do simple art projects. You have an idea, you're like, ooh, you do the process, experiment with it, and you've created something. I wanted to understand how this relates to the bigger picture. So as we move into the second circle, this is the day. You see, we went from the now to the thought, and one of the things I wrote here was beware of stagnance. And what that means is, if you allow your thought patterns to stagnate, then they become sour. And I know, and most of us know, because it's happened before, you get stuck in a process stage or just an idea stage, and the creation part is difficult. Or even if you do create, but the processes and the ideas aren't good enough, you're in the same boat. So it's kind of an even keel there. You have to balance those out. So anyhow, we move from the thought into a day's cycle. And after that I go to a year cycle, and then the life cycle. So when we move into the day, we awaken in the morning, and then we move into midday, which is kind of our learning phase. And this is very general and metaphoric. So you move from the learning phase into the work phase, So in other words, the learning phase might be waking up and reading the newspaper before work, or looking at the headlines, whatever it might be. And then we move into our work phase, whatever that might be, even if you're not, you don't have to take it as literal physical work, but whatever you do with your life. And in the evening, we go into the next part, which is reflection. And then we do it all over again. Well, now we move into the year. Now the spring, right here. The spring is the renewal, the awakening. It's very similar to the morning, right? Then we have the summer, which is kind of exploration, and that's the learning phase. We have the fall, which is the work phase. That's when people would harvest their crops and grains, and that's very similar to the working phase here. Well, then you move into winter, and winter is the time when a lot of people feel guilty for not doing enough, maybe sitting around. And I've been thinking about that lately, as I've been lazy. And then I think, well, the winter is the same as the reflection phase. Or, in the next cycle, the death phase, which is how we move into the cycle of life. We have birth. Birth is the renewal. Youth is gaining knowledge. Adolescence is exploration. Adulthood is work. And then we have the elder, and that's time for reflection, just like the winter. But also, then we have to ask, what is death? And up here I wrote kind of this, maybe there's a rebirth. Who knows? I can't go into that, but these things fascinate me. Looking at this, to me, it really kind of helps me understand some things do coincide with one another and others don't. And over here we have the great cycles. That's kind of something I was thinking about. The precession of the equinoxes, like a 72,000-year-old cycle, somewhere around there. And I've always been fascinated with these 12,000-year-old disaster cycles that, many people, claim. I follow many legitimate, but also many I guess I hear from a lot of non-legitimate sources too, that, of course we're going into some phase of, these great cycles where there's a major disaster on Earth. I don't know about that. Can't guarantee it. Definitely won't really matter in my personal lifetime, even though that's a totally separate discussion. But what I wanted to get here was the behavioral cycles and mental cycles, because each day we go through these phases where we might feel like we're really motivated. And the same thing happens within the year. There's certain times when we're motivated and certain times when we're not. And in the Western way of life, we're told that we have to work year-round, and feel motivated to work year-round. Well, in the old days, you would work in the spring, and then you would tend, and you would work in the fall. But the winter was reflection time. It was time to relax and think and understand and process the year, and live, spend time with your family quietly. There were always hardships, but that's not the point. We are completely obsessed with the cycle without understanding the cycle. It's, I don't know. There's not a lot I can say to this. This over here is just the original kind of rough draft version, and then I put it on the board. And then over here I have choices and circumstances, which doesn't mean a whole lot. It's just the paths we can take. I started out with birth and youth, and then the first one says the world is safe, and the other one's the world is dangerous. And it goes on to say life is lucky or life is bad, and I tied it all into a positive or negative outlook, and really that means absolutely nothing. I guess I could say, ooh, this is the answer to life, and these charts are, will help you understand yourself, but I don't, because that would be a complete hogwash. And every time I do make something like that, I think, God, there's guys out there who really think they have the answer to it all, because I've read enough books and enough gurus and self-help shit to where I'm like, people make up ideas like this all the time and claim they know what they're talking about. But it doesn't do any good unless you understand it for yourself, unless you can apply it to your life. But all that I found in this whole choices and circumstances thing was that you either get lucky or you don't. But there's in the middle, you refuse change or you accept change. So if you get lucky, you'll generally be happy. If you don't, you probably won't. Well, If you accept change, then you will generally be happy. And if you don't, it's the same way. If you refuse the fight, if you deny the fight, if you ignore the reality of life, you'll end up in this black zone right here. And if you make the most of it, you'll generally be in a positive outlook. I consider myself a positive person, but that doesn't really mean anything. In the big picture, it's just a silly term. Positivity, you know. What is enlightenment? What's positivity? What, you know, it's just all the same shit. And I was going to add into this video some other thoughts that I had about gurus and the philosophy of life, but that's for the next video, because I have a series of notes, and I'd like to do that one on camera. So I just wanted to share this with all of you, and let me know what you think about cycles, and have you found any certain patterns within your daily life, within your yearly life, and hopefully we can all learn to accept those things as part of life. And I guess the main reason why I even made this was because I thought about how there's times when I think, damn it, I want to be motivated right now. I really should be doing some stuff. I have spare time, I should be getting this done or that done, but I'm just totally not into it. And I think, you know, should I embrace that? Because other times I'm very motivated to get things done. And it really comes down to a balance and a personal, you know, understanding of life, if you will, the way that you choose to perceive it. In case you're wondering about this, some stupid thing I made become something. This it was a conversation between two people, complete joke, but I didn't know if the whole thing was on camera there. I hope you all have a good day. Take a sip of my coffee here. Turn off the camera. Take a banger and get on to my next vid. Peace out, my friend.